Okay, so I'm ready to start modeling the keys on my xylophone. And I'm going to start by working in my top view. And the first thing I want to do is create a single piece of geometry here for my one key and then use that and duplicate it down. So let me go ahead and I'm going to do that by creating a set of cylinders. Let me move this up before I work in top view. Let me turn off snap to point. And let me also kind of set the, a little bit set the depth of this key and kind of scale it up now to what I think will be the right kind of radius for this key. I want to increase my subdivisions here just a little bit to give more of a kind of smoothness around this edge. So I can do that again just by going to my attribute editor, and because it's a poly primitive, I can do it right here. But I also want to make sure that I'm maintaining this kind of line in the direction that I am. So maybe something like 16 looks about right. And I also think that I want to kind of scale this a little bit. I don't think it's perfectly round. I think that the key looks something like this. So what I can do is, because my whole object is centered on the origin of the workspace, I can mirror this object. Let me go ahead and mirror it in the Z direction, positive Z direction. And I'm not going to combine with original at this time, and I'm just going to hit apply. And so now I have a second set that's been created down here. And let me go ahead and pop back out to my perspective view. And what I can do is I'm going to delete half of the faces that I don't want to keep. Let me go into my layer editor and turn off some of these. That's interesting. The body layer doesn't have the body in it. Well, that's not good. Let me go ahead and add, click on this layer and say, I want to assign, let me maybe right click here, and I'm going to right click and say add selected objects. Okay, so there we are. Now my body is attached to my body layer. And let me turn that off. So I just have this geometry that I'm working on right now. So let me go ahead and select the face mode here and select half of these faces and delete them. And go to face mode here and select half of these faces and delete them. And now what I want to do is I want to combine this mesh. Go to my options here, and I'm going to hit apply. Oh, I have to be in object mode to do this. So I have my two objects selected, hit apply. I'm going to go ahead and delete the history here. And now I'm going to use the bridge tool. And the bridge tool filled in all of the faces that it filled in the adjacent edges with faces. So it did exactly what I wanted it to do here. The next thing I'm going to do is go to my edge loop tool. And I'm going to actually insert two edge loops. I'm going to use multiple edge loop use equal multiplier and do 2, and I'm going to stick 2 edge loops right there. And the reason I'm doing that is so that in order to scale up or down these keys, I can do so by selecting the faces in the center of this key and using this to scale. No, it's not going to allow me to do that. That's kind of funny. Okay. So instead of that, I'm going to, I don't necessarily need 2 then. I need just maybe 1. I'm going to go ahead and undo this. And I'm going to set an edge loop. Do I need an edge loop? I don't think I even do. Let me see. Let me select. I'm going to put one in anyway. It'll make it easier. Just going to insert 1 edge loop. And now I'm going to go ahead and select this half of the model, and I'm going to use, I guess, the translate tool. The other thing I'm going to do actually is when I do that is I'm going to turn on my symmetry and my move settings, and symmetry, and I want to turn that on for world Z so that I can pull these equally. Let me turn back on some of my layers here now that I have my key. And I just do want to double check the depth of this. And I also want to move, go to object mode. I want to move this down into place. And so now I'm going to want to duplicate this key 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. So I'm going to go to Edit, Duplicate Special, and I don't want to rotate it. And I want to only translate it in the X direction. And I said I want 7 copies. And so 0 in the Y, 0 in the X, and I don't want to scale it. And I want to translate it, if I snap back on my grid here and go to my top view, see how many units. Let's see what happens if I say just 2. Let's say apply. Maybe I did it in the wrong direction. Let me see. Did I duplicate this at all? 7 copies. Translate it to. Oh, scale, I want it to be 1. That's probably part of the problem. And hit apply. So that's not enough of a width here. Let me undo. I want 7. And let me Command Z here. And I think maybe, let me translate it 5 and see what that looks like. A little bit too much. Undo and maybe say 4. 4 turned on wireframe. I want to hit 4 here, not in rotate. Translate and hit apply. And you know, that looks pretty good. I think that there's a bit of a, let me see what that looks like compared to what my model looks like and not necessarily what my photograph looks like, because this is not like a true top orthographic view in my photograph. So let me turn off my, or actually let me turn on shaded mode here and turn off my image planes. Go back to perspective view. And I think I like the way that looks. What I'm going to do though is select everything and just move it up a touch and go back to my top view now. That looks pretty good to me. So now I want to, I can actually do this kind of mathematically. Let me go ahead and try to do that. I'm going to go back to my orthographic mode. I'm sorry, I'm going to go back to my wireframe mode, I mean. And I can do this mathematically where I divide by 8 a certain distance that I'm going to translate this key to. I can do something like that. There's a lot of ways that I could make this really, the scale change of these keys can be super accurate. In the interest of time, though, even though a part of me wants to do that, I don't want to necessarily take up your time in this video doing that. So let me go ahead and just turn back on my image planes here, and I'm just going to scale these. And remember, if I'm working in face mode and I select these faces, and I should still have my symmetry selection on, which I do. Let me just start to pull these out. And the reason I want to maintain this curve at the same size. So that's why I have this edge loop here in this, and I'm kind of scaling this. Instead of scaling it with the scale tool, if I scale it with the scale tool, it's going to deform this arc, and I don't want it to do that. I want to maintain that arc. Let me go down here, go to face mode, and I'm just going to go ahead and transform these keys. And let me turn on wireframe mode. Might make it easier for me to see. Turn off my image plane mode. I'm going to turn off my wheels too. Go back and kind of adjust some of this. Selecting. Okay, I think I'm happy with that. The next thing I want to do is place holes on these keys. I'm going to do that by creating a series of cylinders. Let me turn back on my image plane mode to see how big these little pegs are. And again, I'm going to actually use my snap to point tool. And I'm going to turn off the body. So now this is not exactly where it is here in my, I'm going to put these pegs, even though these pegs here are a little bit further in, I'm going to, on my model, I'm going to leave them here at these vertices here. Let me go ahead and scale this down, something like this. And I'm going to duplicate this. I'm just going to do it manually by pressing Command D, snap it over here, Command D, snap it here, Command D, Command D, Command D, Command D. Okay, and I'm going to go to my side view here and just select all of these, and I just want to move them down a little bit. Bye. Okay, awesome. And now let me do some difference booleans here. Might have taken a little bit less time if I had done this operation first and then duplicated all the keys. That way I don't have to go ahead and do it one by one here. So just bear with me as you can probably skip ahead in the video if you'd like. Okay, so my keys and the holes are finished. The last part of my model here is going to be the pegs. Let me turn back on. And so what I'm going to do to make a peg is start with a sphere, scale it down, and I'm going to place it, I'll start placing one here. And I'm actually going to, if we can see, they kind of have this like mushroom shape to them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my soft selection tool. And I'm going to actually, before I do anything, I want to go to my attribute editor here, and I don't need this many subdivisions. I'm going to say 10 and 10. And I'm going to right click and work in vertex mode. And I'm going to select my bottom vertice. And the threshold fall off radius looks pretty good. So if I just kind of pull this up, I'm able to create a nice kind of mushroom shape. And this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to face mode. I'm going to turn this off. And let me pull this whole object out. Quickly. And this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to extrude. Let me go in and I can use my paint selection tool actually here. And if I hit, you can see how large my brush is for my paint selection. And if I hit B on my keyboard and I pull, I'm able to change the size of my brush. That works for any type of brush in Maya. Let me go ahead and paint these bottom faces and go to my modeling toolkit and say extrude, and I'm going to pull these down. And I'm going to go working in my side view, and I want to frame this up here, move this out of the way, and I'm just going to pull. I'm going to actually maybe work in snap to point mode, see if I can pull this down right on top of, it's not going to let me, okay. I'm going to get as close as I can to the top of this, the top of my xylophone. Because what I'm thinking is I'm going to 3D print each of these separately and then maybe glue them to the body, right? So that's kind of how I'm thinking about how I would end up creating this as a 3D printed object or something. So that looks pretty good. I actually think I want to make this a little bit bigger. So if I select these faces and scale them out, and scale them down a little bit though. I think that looks pretty good. That looks like the peg. Let me just make sure that this would fit into one of my, oops, right click and go back to object mode. Let me make sure, since I'm so far away, I didn't mess anything up. Okay, and let me move this guy back, and let's just make sure that this could hypothetically fit inside this hole that I created. That looks pretty good. So now I'm just going to duplicate this, and in the interest of time, I'm just going to kind of eyeball and line it up. Go to my top view to do that. Go to shaded mode here. Maybe I do want to work in wireframe so I can see through. I mean, I would really like to be able to line these up pretty well, if I can. Kind of eyeball it here. I don't have a center point anymore because this hole's gone. So just some things that, like, in retrospect, I could have probably done more efficiently, is to create these pegs first before I did my Boolean to cut out the holes. And then again, once I have these all kind of in position, lined up the way I want, I'm going to select them all, and using my layer editor here is really pretty helpful. I can just get rid of geometry that I'm not using. I'm going to select all of these, and now I'm going to say mirror, I could do a duplicate, but doing a mirror is going to put them exactly where I want them on the other side. So I'm going to mirror this, and in the Z direction, positive Z direction, hit apply, and there they are. Okay, and let me turn back on my body layer and my wheels. And there I have my xylophone. The last thing that I just want to do with this xylophone is add materials to it. So I'm going to do that in the last video. So feel free to watch that if you're interested in how I'm applying materials. For this project, you don't need to apply materials, but I'm going to do it because I want this to, I don't want this to look, I want this to have color to it. It's too colorful as an original object, not to add color to it. So, and again, this whole, project is attached on Canvas or uploaded on Canvas, so you can open it up and look at the model yourself.